Kicking off the list at number 10, Sky Eye 2022. In a list of scandalous signals, we gotta start off with a recent Sky Eye observation. Yeah, just a couple of weeks ago, China's Sky Eye telescope picked up what they believed were signs of alien civilizations. Just out there, just in the great beyond. Science and Technology Daily posted about this, and then they deleted the post. I'm sorry, what? Why? What? The report cited Chief Scientist of Extraterrestrial Civilizations, Zhang Tongji, the same team that is co-founded by the National Astronomical Observatory of the Chinese Academy of Science and the University of California, Berkeley. So, aka the real deal. The Sky Eye, I mean, first of all, it's massive. It has a diameter of 500 meters, and there were 2 signals in 2020 that were detected, and then another one in 2022 on June 14th. Super recent. Do you believe we're alone in the universe? Or are these signals coming from the same place? Just maybe us, but over there. Sound off below, I don't know. I kind of believe in aliens. Number 9, 2007, first radio burst. That's right, back in 2007. Scientists Duncan Lorimer and David Narkovic, they both discovered the first FRB. The FFRB, there we go. Thing is, these flashes of energy, they last milliseconds. They're galaxies away, they're extremely random. And they're also 100 times more powerful than that of the sun. So yeah, it's important to these two that further research was done. Good thing, eh? Or else this certainly wouldn't have gotten to part 2. I'll tell you that for free. Thanks lads. Hit that thumbs up for those guys, not even me this time, just for them. The conclusion was that these bursts, they happen thousands of times a day. Space is unfathomably large. So far, the candidates for sending out these cosmic paparazzi flashes, so far scientists believe they're from neutron stars or white dwarfs. Otherwise, they're extremely mysterious, hence why we're still talking about them in part 2. Number 8, chime in. This next one comes from Canada. Ah yes, I knew I recognized these bloops. Radio bursts, or FRBs, they've been hitting our planet for some time now, and the CHIME telescope has decided to, well, chime in. The first signal was detected back in 2007, and since then, whatever's sending this message just can't get enough of us lovely, friendly Canadians. And neither can you, apparently. Hit that thumbs up. We love you. 1 millisecond long signal is wonderful enough, but to have this anomaly repeat itself, well, that's when we Canadians start to overthink things. We've got some ET thoughts going on in our brains now. The repeated signal came again in 2015 and then again last January. Maybe it's Morse code, just really slow Morse code. They're like, please help. 4 billion years later, we're like, what was that? Number 7, Russian space signals. Last time I talked about the Russians on Most Amazing Top 10, I mentioned their super deep borehole, which is fascinating and fun, I guess. Well, this time we're looking up to the skies. There we go, we're flipping it. Astronomers picked up the signal using Ratan 600 radio telescope, which is a large radio observatory in southwest Russia. And it was the same idea. The signal was coming from a nearby star, specifically star HD 164595. It's the high definition star. We don't want that SD star. We can't see that one. It's the HD one. It's really hot. It's roughly 95 light years away from Earth. Again, it's far enough where we obviously don't need to worry about what's sending anything. But again, this star is known to have a planet near its orbit. That's why we have to at least think about it. Director for the Center of SETI Research advises all to curb their expectations. This planet is too close to that star to support life. So what's sending it? Some lava aliens? Number 6, underwater TIE fighters. Okay, imagine you're scuba diving, right? Looking for a nice seashell for the wife, because that's what you do. And then you hear this underwater. Yeah, it's hard collecting seashells for the wife when you hear a TIE fighter below you. I don't know what this bit is with the seashell, I don't know, but I'm in it. What in the world is going on? What is that sound? It definitely had some people stumped for a while when it was first heard, but luckily this one has a fairly simple and harmless explanation. Yeah, this Star Wars sound is actually coming from dwarf minke whales. Yeah, they get a little deep blue Darth Vader down there. Apparently, they have to fight back. Many strange ocean noises or space noises, any signal that we receive, ends up being attributed to whales or icebergs or planets. Considering how creepy these things sound, I'm glad that we got an actual answer. Or else, imagine not knowing what that was. I'd never go in the ocean again. I know what that was, and I'm still never going in the ocean again. So that's how much I don't like it. Number 5, big boom. Turning the calendars back to May 2010 in Pennsylvania. Residents were enjoying their day when, you guessed it, they heard this loud boom. Something shocked them. It actually shook the residents, figuratively and literally. They were shook. Resident Kim Owen reported to the Sun Gazette news outlet that at first she didn't really think much about it. That's until a friend of hers who lives only a few blocks away posted on Facebook about said incident. And she's like, okay, I'm not crazy. I heard this too. The post was reaching out to others in the community asking if they too heard this loud boom. So far, the leading theory, believe it or not, is meteorites crashing into Earth. The more plausible scenario is that these booms are caused by the high pressure gases being released from Earth's surface. Just Mother Nature just farting, just letting it out. Number 4, Saturn signals. We'll continue this list with an ocean signal out of this world, and I mean that in a literal sense. This one comes from Thanos' home planet, Titan. Titan is one of Saturn's many moons. It actually has 82 of them in total, so if you're a werewolf, avoid Saturn. You'll be really exhausted. Around 10 years ago, NASA's Cassini spacecraft detected water in its shell of ice. That's pretty exciting. And to quote a Cassini team member, the search for water is an important goal in our solar system exploration, and now we've spotted another place where it is abundant. Yeah, we love abundant ice on our planet where signals are coming from. That's great. Now I can't sleep. NASA has detected low-frequency radio waves on Saturn's icy moon, and it sounds pretty eerie. To know that it's off-planet entirely and it's underwater, that's like a double scary for me. I'm like, ooh, I can't watch that twice now. Number 3, can't you hear me knocking? This knocking sound was picked up by an underwater hydrophone, and like many others on this list, we had no idea what we were listening to for a very long time. We were all stumped by this. The ocean is already unexplored and freaky, so unexplained signals definitely aren't, too soothing for the soul. Signals like this, for example. Before we talk about what this sound is coming from, imagine being in the deep dark icy waters and hearing that. That's what I'm talking about. This is something out of the quarry, okay? What is making that sound in there, my friend? These are some haunted waters. I'm gonna choose the other path. I'm not going there. But it turns out the real source isn't as scary as Megalodon. This is actually the sound of a species of haddock fish. Yeah, just a loud lunch down there, no biggie. These types of haddock are ray-finned fish that can be found in the North Atlantic Ocean. The male of the species will produce this pulsating drum sound in order to attract a mate, or a sandworm, I guess. It's a good Dune joke for all the... Watch Dune if you haven't watched Dune. Yeah, this guy will just beatbox under a rock until he's married. That's the best. How great is that? Fish are awesome. Outside of the mating season, the same noise can be heard, but this time it's aggressive. It's for scaring away other fish. A little different. He's like, hey. So for years, scientists had no idea this was a fish. They thought it was an alien or some type of space signal coming in. These could all be fish, who knows? I could do a follow-up and be like, hey, they were fish, they were all cod, we didn't know. Number 2, the hum. This one creeps me out a lot. I think I've heard the hum, honestly. Maybe it was Kid Cudi in the distance, who knows? The hum has been heard for decades and we still have no idea where it's coming from. Our best guess is that it has something to do with, you guessed it, the ocean, as do many of these things, either off-world or on. A resident from Woodland, England spoke out on their experience saying that it vibrates through the house, and we've turned all the electricity off in the house and we can still hear it. So it's not that. It's not tinnitus, that's the high-pitched sound, and this is very low. If I put my fingers on my ears, it stops, so I know it's not in my head. Side note, that's terrifying. Imagine seeing your family and they're all like plugging their ears. They're like, do you hear it? Hear what? What am I doing? What? It's commonly heard in Hawaii, Britain, North America, pretty much everywhere all over the world. We have no idea. Some have called it the Windsor hum, which is insanely close to where I am right now. Don't stalk me. Hence why I think that I've heard it. So now I point the microphone to you for this one. Have you ever heard the hum? If so, where were you? Where do you live? Reports of the hum go back to New Mexico as early as 1991, so I feel like it's not going anywhere soon if you haven't heard it for yourself. There it is again. I knew it. Maybe it's a B. Who knows? And finally, number 1, the boom. In early 2021, San Diego residents reacted to what sounded like a sonic boom, which is pretty alarming. Especially if you watch Top Gun Maverick. You're like, what is that? Well, it's been heard 3 times since the initial report, and many still have questions, obviously. Windows are shaking, doors were rattling, all of San Diego heard and felt this thing in their chest. It's like when you go to a concert and you can feel it in your chest. It's kind of like that, except middle of the day when you don't want to feel things in your chest. But what was it? Was it an earthquake? Being in San Diego and all residents are used to earthquakes, but this was an entirely different feeling. Also, it helps to know that no earthquakes were reported at the time, so definitely can check that off our list. The Marines certainly didn't take responsibility for it, and if it wasn't sonic boom from a plane, then, well, what could it be? If it was a plane ripping overhead, it would be pretty obvious. Plus, they're not allowed to do that kind of stuff that close to the coast. So, again, check that off the list. December 28th, 2021, residents were posting their thoughts on Twitter, and one user tweeted, "San Diego is cool," because I'm like, oh wow, I just felt an earthquake. But not actually, it was just a sonic boom. Well, keep an ear open for any more mysterious sonic booms coming from the ocean in 2022. The last one wasn't long ago at all. So if you live in San Diego, drop a comment down below. Must be nice. Kicking off our list at number 10. 2020 chime. Back on April 28th, 2020, not too long ago at all, the Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment, or CHIME for short, picked up a massive radio blast coming from the Milky Way. Yeah, long ways away. Past the Star Wars universe, past the Marvel universe. It's from over there. Here's the kicker. Assistant Professor of Physics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Kiyoshi Masui, they say that CHIME wasn't even looking in the right direction, and they still saw this signal loud and clear in their peripheral vision. Yeah, this caught CHIME's eye, and it certainly caught our attention. This FRB, fast radio burst, was pinned down to a location 30,000 light years away. I can't even fathom how far away that is. I can't even watch Interstellar without having a panic attack, okay? This is next level. This April 2020 burst is now the most energetic radio blast recorded, and it repeats itself roughly every 16 days. Yeah, there's the kicker to the kicker. These bursts are mysterious, and they're coming from worlds that we can't even see yet. Every one of these signals tells a story. The first ever recorded burst was, drumroll, number 9. Proxima Centauri. The closest star to us, of course, other than our own sun, is Proxima Centauri. This star is 4.2 light years away, so whatever's sending this message, I don't think we're gonna get it. I don't think we got it soon enough, to be honest. I think we're a little late. There's one planet that orbits the star out of 2, and it's likely similar to our own in its rocky nature. So maybe these are our cosmic neighbors, sending a few bleeps and or bloops to let us know that they're out there, right? Just being friendly. Or they're threatening us with said bleeps and bloops. One of the two. A graduate from the Pennsylvania State University and team member on the initial discovery, Sophia Sheik, they say, quote, "It's pretty expected that every now and then you'll see something weird, but this is interesting because it's something that's weird and we're having to think about the next steps." End quote. Yeah, the next steps? Yeah, let's look into this, please. I'll keep my notifications on for the space stuff. Number 8, secret planet. All these galaxies, all these bursts, it's easy for us to dismiss because we don't get it. But what if they're coming from planets with habitable life, right? That's the main question we're all trying to answer. Earth is sending radio waves through space every single day. Right now, there's literal garbage just hovering above us in space. 40,000 pieces of space junk just casually whipping around our planet at 18,000 miles per hour. Every other planet litters too, right? It's not just us. In October 2021, the Netherlands LOFAR, their low frequency array, picked up signals from a planet located outside of our solar system. Dr. Benjamin Pope discovered these signals and believes there's a chance of life on other planets. Dr. Pope also says, quote, "We've long known that planets of our own solar system emit powerful radio waves as their magnetic fields interact with solar wind. But radio signals from planets outside of our solar system had yet to be picked up. This discovery is an important step for radio astronomy and could potentially lead to the discovery of planets throughout the galaxy." End quote. Yeah, I mean, I believe in aliens. I saw the movie Signs when I was like 7. I was convinced ever since. That birthday party scene, so scary. Yeah, dude. He walked by like 3 times, dude. He's keep going. Number 7, NASA UAP division. At what point do we ask, is this real? I mean, we have UFOs whipping around on the news now. Are we leaning in? Are we laughing? Because I can't tell anymore, to be honest. Well, NASA is all but fun and games. They announced June 9th, 2022, so like 3 weeks ago, they announced that they were setting up an independent study specifically on these unidentified aerial phenomena. Yeah, we can't forget about these odd signals that the Navy's picking up here on our planet. Those are also important, right? Navy pilot Ryan Graves has said numerous times now, and to CBS, publicly, he said he would see these UFOs, every single day. Like for example, another drum roll. Number 6, Jupiter's moon. Not to be confused with Jupiter Ascending, that was a terrible film. The Jupiter moon Ganymede is a bit more of a mystery, it seems. NASA's Juno spacecraft caught an FM radio signal coming from the giant's moon. Every time I say FM radio signal, I'm just like, it's like, what's up, Toronto? Like, I just think of like radio. My brain's so stupid. This moon has salty subsurface oceans. And in part 1, I mentioned a similar signal that was coming from Saturn, so I don't know, man. Oceans in space, I've seen the Avengers, you know what I mean? What if aliens come to our oceans next? Who's gonna fight them? The boardwalk water jetpack guy who can't figure it out, maybe? We're screwed. Jupiter has 79 moons, so whatever is sending these signals, I feel like there's more coming very soon. Number 5, whistle. That's not bad. If you can whistle, honestly, hats off. I've been trying for years, and my lips are too dry and weak. I have weak lips. This whistle, recorded in July 1997, was not like my whistle. It's not weak at all. And it certainly wasn't dry either, yeah. The thing with this mysterious signal is that it was only picked up by one hydrophone in our ocean, meaning that scientists now can't pinpoint its location, making this an unexplained sound/signal. Yep, again, another spooky one coming from on our planet. We love those. It came from somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. Yeah, somewhere. How calming is that? Here's the unidentified sound. Tell me what you think this is. The NOAA has compared the sound to volcanogenic sounds previously heard in the Marianas volcanic arc. I'm gonna say volcanic again. But again, we can't pinpoint the sound or signal at all because we need 3 hydrophones to do so, and this one was only picked up by 1. Hence mystery, hence fear, hence I'm never swimming in the ocean. Number 4, the train. This signal was given its name because, well, it sounds like a train. It's as simple as that sometimes. It was first recorded on March 5th, 1997. It sounds honestly like my PlayStation 4 when it fires up. It sounds like it's about to lift up and fly away. It sounds like a really loud fan in the distance. The theory as to what is making that sound is not a surprising one. So far, we think it's large icebergs grounding near Ross Sea and Cape Adair. Friendly reminder though that more than 80% of the ocean is undiscovered. So my only question is, what if it's not that? What if it's one of those Titan, ocean, other planet, moon signals? And it's a monster, and it's gonna come eat our families. Number 3, the buzzer. Back in the 80s, a radio tower just north of Moscow began transmitting these random and, dare I say, creepy sounding beeps and bloops. Yeah, who knew a bleep and or bloop could be scary? This channel, we've heard all the bloops. Cut to 1992, this sound began to change. That year, it suddenly switched to a buzzing sound. It was short and sweet. It would happen around 25 times a minute. This is odd, because this strange routine would then be interrupted once every few weeks by a male voice, which would then be reciting a string of numbers and words randomly, like he was trying to reset the Winter Soldier or something like that. It was creepy. And to make things even more bizarre, in June 2010 and also in August of the same year, the station again changed, and now there were shuffling sounds and thuds, almost like somebody was moving around near a microphone. And then also there would be little snippets of the dance of the little swans from Swan Lake that would interrupt the broadcast. Yeah, the story gets creepier and creepier. It's like, oh, it's weird things. Oh, it's a buzzing. Oh, it's a guy's voice. Oh, it's Swan Lake? Unsubscribe. Number 2, upsweep. This one is still unidentified, so sleep knowing that. Let's do it. Sound travels much faster underwater than it does in air, more than 4 times as fast, which is pretty sweet. It's how when you crack your knuckles underwater, you're like, oh, that was crazy. So when we hear these noises or these signals, one, they're incredibly loud, which is the most impressive aspect, but because sound travels so quickly, again, it's hard to pinpoint where these calls or signals are coming from in a massive, unexplored ocean. Upsweep is an unidentified sound that was heard throughout the entire Pacific Ocean, not just a little spot. Everyone heard this one. All the crabs were like, did you hear that too? He's like, yeah. I was like, what was that? That was crazy. When the Pacific Ocean Marine Environmental Laboratory fired up its sound surveillance system back in August 1991, these sounds were heard. Like the sounds that we've covered so far or signals that have come from outer space, this one happens in real time. It's not sped up, it's not in the blink of an eye. It just sounds like this, real time, which is scarier. These upsweeping sounds last a few seconds for each ping, and the source was roughly located around the New Zealand and South America area, and it peaks around autumn and spring. So maybe it's just, you know, a monster tucking itself in for the winter. Maybe it's hibernating. Maybe it's waking back up in spring. Who knows? I'm trying to figure this thing out just like you. Our best guess is that it's an underwater volcano, but until it pops off, who knows? Fingers crossed. And finally, number 1, slow down. Not to be confused with Slow Ride. Although that is a great song. Jupiter Ascending, bad movie. Slow Ride, good song. We're learning things today. Slow Down was recorded on May 19th, 1997. It was picked up in the equatorial Pacific Ocean, just in the middle of nowhere, as you would have guessed. The NOAA picked it up not once, but several times every single year since. Our best guess as to what this sound is, or what this signal could be, is moving ice under Antarctica. Hopefully. But the fascinating part is that the sound decreases in frequency over time, which is a little odd. It takes about 7 minutes in total, so we can't include the entire clip or else you'd be pretty bored, but here's the one clip 16 times as fast, so you get what I'm talking about. But a little odd there, right? Scientists believe that the sound is a massive iceberg scratching against the ocean floor over the course of 7 minutes until it came to a stop. But the fact that we hear this sound every year, that's the confusing part. That's why we're ending this list on that mysterious "I'm never swimming in the ocean" fact. There you go.
Number 10. Pisces and Aries radio signal. A radio signal was received 3 times from the same region of space in February 2003. Astronomers with the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence (SETI) project used a massive telescope in Puerto Rico to re-examine 200 sections of the sky which had all previously yielded unexplained radio signals. These signals had all disappeared except for one, which had become stronger. The signal's widely thought to be the best candidate yet for alien contact and comes from a spot between the constellations Pisces and Aries where there are no obvious stars or planets. Curiously, the signal is at one of the frequencies that hydrogen, the most common element, absorbs and emits energy. Some astronomers believe that this is a very likely frequency at which aliens wishing to be noticed would transmit. Nevertheless, there's still a good chance the signal is from a never-seen-before natural phenomenon, but I'd like to think that it's aliens.
Number 9. Slow Down. Let's come back to our world, shall we, for the next few? Slow Down was recorded on May 19th, 1997. Now, this signal was picked up in the equatorial Pacific Ocean, just in the middle of nowhere, which is the odd part here. See, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, they picked it up not once, but several times every year since its initial discovery. Now, our best guess as to what the sound is maybe, hopefully, moving ice in Antarctica. But the fascinating part here is that the sound decreases in frequency over time. So something's changing, something's moving around. Like that fan up there, it's moving around. Something's in that fan. It's like there's a guy up there, I'm pretty sure. It takes about 7 minutes in total, so we can't include the entire clip or else you'd be pretty bored in this video. But here's that clip 16 times as fast, so you know we're talking a massive iceberg scratching against the ocean floor over the course of that 7 minutes until it came to a stop, which is pretty crazy. But the fact that we hear this sound every year, well, that's the weird part. That's why it's on this list today. Could it be the Kraken? Maybe it's from that episode of SpongeBob where they're sliding that big rock. Good times.
Number 8. Milky Way signal. On April 28, 2020, 2 ground-based radio telescopes detected an intense pulse of radio waves within the Milky Way. It was the first time an FRB had ever been detected within our galaxy, and despite only lasting a millisecond, it was almost impossible to miss. Located just 300,000 light years away from Earth, the FRB was picked up by the Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment, CHIME, and the Survey for Transient Astronomical Radio Emission 2, STARE-2. CHIME wasn't even looking in the right direction, and we still saw it loud and clear in our peripheral vision, said Kyoshu Masu, assistant professor of physics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. STARE-2 also saw it, and it's only a set of a few radio antennae literally made out of cake pans. April 2020's discovery was also notable for being the most energetic radio blast that astronomers have recorded in the Milky Way. But what made it most exciting is that scientists are now closer to determining the origin of FRBs. They've been billions of light years away, making them a lot harder to study, but now there's one close by. Number 7. Mysterious signals from a distant galaxy. The CHIME Observatory found 13 FRBs, and among it was a very unusual repeating signal coming from the same source about 1.5 billion light years away. Such an event has only been reported once before by a different telescope. Knowing that there is another suggests that there could be more life out there, said Ingrid Stairs, an astrophysicist from the University of British Columbia. And with more repeaters and more sources available to study, we may be able to understand these cosmic puzzles, where they're from, and what causes them. The telescope detected 13 of the radio bursts almost immediately, including the repeater. The research has now been published in the journal Nature. We have discovered a second repeater, and its properties are very similar to the first repeater. This tells us more about the properties of the repeater as a population, said Sir Harsh Tendulkar of McGill University, Canada. Number 6. Star closest to the sun radio signal. An as yet unexplained radio signal appears to be coming from the direction of the star closest to the sun, a small red star roughly 4.2 light years away called Proxima Centauri. Adding to the excitement, at least 2 planets orbit this star, one of which might be a temperate and rocky like Earth. Breakthrough Listen, a decade-long search for alien broadcasts from the nearest million stars, was using Australia's Parkes Observatory to study Proxima Centauri when the team detected the signal, which they dubbed BLC-1. The radio waves were picked up in observations made between April and May 2019. While processing those observations in the summer, Shane Smith, an undergraduate from Hillside College in Michigan working with Breakthrough, spotted BLC-1 apparently radiating from the star. Although the signal is faint, BLC-1 passed all the tests the Breakthrough team uses to filter out millions of signals generated by humans. It was narrow in bandwidth, appeared to drift in frequency, and disappeared when the telescope shifted its gaze from Proxima to a different object. Over the following days, 4 similar signals appeared, although some have been ruled out as radio interference. It's pretty expected that every now and then you'll see something weird, but this is interesting because it's something that's weird and that we have to think about the next steps, says Sophia Sky, a graduate student at Pennsylvania State University and the Breakthrough team member leading the signal analysis. Number 5. Farthest radio signal from a galaxy. Astronomers using a radio telescope in India have captured the most distant ever radio signal from a galaxy. This signal came from a galaxy called SDSS J0826 plus 5630 that exists 8.8 billion light years away. That essentially means that it exists closer to the Big Bang than any other galaxy previously detected using radio astronomy. A galaxy emits different kinds of radio signals, said Arnab Chakraborty, a postdoctoral researcher who studies cosmology at the Department of Physics at McGill University in Montreal, Canada. Until now, it's only been possible to capture this particular signal from a galaxy nearby, limiting our knowledge to those galaxies closer to Earth. The researchers from both Montreal and India used the giant meter wave radio telescope in Pune, India, to capture the signal at a specific wavelength called the 21 centimeter line. The signal from the galaxy was emitted when the universe was only 4.9 billion years old, but because the universe is expanding, it took 8.8 billion years to reach the telescope. Wow. This breakthrough proves that it's possible to observe faraway galaxies using low-frequency radio telescopes. This will help us understand the composition of galaxies at a much greater distance from Earth, said Arnab. Number 4. Radio signal heartbeat. Astronomers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology have picked up repetitive radio signals from a galaxy billions of light years from Earth. Scientists have not been able to pinpoint the exact location of the radio waves yet, but the signals have been occurring steadily and last up to 3 seconds. Most fast radio bursts, or the FRBs, only last a few milliseconds. Within this window, the team detected bursts of radio waves that repeated every 0.2 seconds in a clear periodic pattern, similar to a beating heart, MIT said in a statement. On December 21, 2019, researcher at the Dominion Radio Astrophysical Observatory in British Columbia, Canada, picked up signal of a potential FRB, according to the MIT statement. Not only was it very long, lasting about 3 seconds, but there were periodic peaks that were remarkably precise, emitting every fraction of a second, boom boom boom, like a heartbeat, said Danielle Michelli, a postdoctoral researcher in the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's Calvi Institute for Astrophysics and Space Research. This is the first time the signal itself is periodic. Data on the bursts, including their frequency and how they change based on where the source is located in proximity to Earth, could help researchers determine at what speed the universe is expanding. Number 3. Bright, quick blasts of radio waves. Repeating bursts of energy seem to be coming from an ancient group of stars called a globular cluster, which is among the last places astronomers expected to find them. Often originating billions of light years away, the extremely bright, extremely brief bursts of radio waves, known as the fast radio bursts, have defied explanation since they were first spotted in 2007. Based on observations to date, scientists surmise that the bursts are powered by young, short-lived cosmic objects. But a fast fast radio burst discovered has now been traced to a globular cluster about 11.7 million light-years away near the neighboring spiral galaxy M81. To put it in perspective, finding this burst among a cluster of aging stars is kind of like finding a smartphone embedded in the Stonehenge. The observation doesn't make sense. Brian Gainsler, an astronomer from the University of Toronto, said this is definitely not a place where fast radio bursts are expected to live. Scientists are struggling to explain the cosmic aneurism. They're also moving toward the conclusion that maybe, as with many other celestial phenomena, there are multiple ways to cook up a fast radio burst. Number 2. Bursts of energy. While mapping radio waves across the universe, astronomers found a celestial object releasing giant bursts of energy, unlike anything they've ever seen before. The spinning space object, spotted in March 2018, beamed out radiation 3 times per hour. In those moments, it became the brightest source of radio waves viewable from Earth, acting like a celestial lighthouse. A study on the discovery was published in the journal Nature. Lead study author Natasha Hurley-Walker, an astrophysicist at the Curtin University node of the International Center for Radio Astronomy Research, said this object was appearing and disappearing over a few hours during our observations. That was completely unexpected. It was kind of spooky for an astronomer because there's nothing known in the sky that does that, and it's really quite close to us, about 4,000 light-years away. It's in our galactic backyard. Curtin University doctoral student Tyrone O'Doherty made the unusual discovery while using the Murchison-Wilford Array, aka the MWA telescope in the outback of Western Australia. Tyrone said, "It's exciting that the source I identified last year has turned out to be such a particular object. The MWA's wide field of view and extreme sensitivity are perfect for surveying the entire sky and detecting the unexpected." And coming in at number 1, the WOW signal. In 1997, astronomer Jerry Amen was researching at the Ohio State University when an incredible and unexplainable radio signal was detected using the school's Big Ear telescope. In those days, information was run through what was called an IBM 1130 mainframe computer before being printed on paper and then studied by hand. Upon reviewing his findings, Jerry came across something he had never seen before. There, in a vertical column, was the sequence 6EQUJ5. Jerry was amazed and immediately circled the sequence and wrote "wow" right beside it, hence the name. The signal they picked up had come from nearly 220 million light-years away, and there was no explanation as to how or why a radio signal could be detected from that distance. It immediately became a sensation in both the science community and the rest of the world, and was used to support the search for alien life in the universe. Jerry himself says he's convinced that it certainly has the potential to be the first signal from extraterrestrial intelligence.
Number 10. Waterworld. Now, if you've seen Avatar 2, this first one on today's list will get you pretty pumped. Could this be Jake Sully himself? Can we help him? What do we do? Can I be a big blue guy? Be a dream come true. Scientists have recently discovered a planet completely covered by ocean water. It's just one big blue ball floating in the sky. Now, it sounds exciting and haunting all at the same time. I'm not a big fan of oceans, so this is just bad. Or space. I don't like either. This is a mix of both. It was first spotted by NASA's space telescope TESS, which is the Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, TESS, which, as its name hint towards, surveys the entire sky to find, hopefully, exoplanets around nearby bright stars. Some interstellar stuff going on there. Why do we need to know, right? Are we moving? Lo and behold, orbiting a star 100 light-years from Earth lies a water planet in a habitable zone of space, where its temperature would be just right for liquid water to exist on the surface, and apparently might be a tropical paradise. I don't know, looks kind of fun. Astronomers have called TOI 1452b, that's the name of the planet, the best ocean planet candidate discovered so far. I don't know. Should we move? I'm not a big fan of water. This sounds like the worst place for me. TESS observes a slight decrease in brightness of a star in a binary star system every 11 days. And then after more than 50 hours of observation, they estimated the planet's mass at nearly 5 times that of Earth. So yeah, it's massive. There's plenty of room for all of us to drown.
Number 9. Mysterious beam of energy. In December 2020, researchers announced that they had captured a very mysterious beam of energy in the radio part of the electromagnetic spectrum at 980 MHz, coming from the closest star to our own. Proxima Centauri, which is just 4.2 light-years away, hosts one gas giant and one rocky world 17% larger than Earth that happens to be in its star's habitable zone, meaning liquid water could exist there. The unexplained signal reportedly shifted slightly while it was being observed in a way that resembled the shift caused by the movement of a planet. Researchers are excited but cautious, explaining that they will need to figure out if more mundane sources, such as a comet, hydrogen cloud, or even human technology, could be mimicking an alien signal, and that it will likely take time before they know one way or another if aliens are contacting us.
Number 8. Sirens, aka mermaids. Can they sing? Can they call out to sailors and make them do crazy stuff? Who knows? The mythology surrounding sirens, it's interesting, but I really don't think we have any Atlanteans flirting with sailors, you know what I mean? No one's getting catcalled by a mermaid, you know what I mean? It's not happening. On his first trip overseas back in 1493, Christopher Columbus claims to have seen not one, not two, but 3 sirens. He even wrote about it, he journaled. He said they rose well out of the sea, but they are not so beautiful as they are said to be. And he signed off. Little rhyme. What is that, Dr. Seuss? How disappointing. They're not that beautiful after all. Damn. I mean, when it comes to correctly identifying places and or people, obviously Christopher Columbus can get a little confused. We know this in history now. So historians believe that Christopher Columbus may have seen a manatee. Yeah, this guy's journaling about falling in love with not one, not two, but 3 manatees. He's like, I wish. If only they loved me back. What an idiot. Yeah, Chris, those were manatees. Their skin is pink and fleshy, so I guess it's a fair mix-up. But, you know. Historically, sirens have been known to call out sailors, but, I mean, I don't think this wasn't that case. Number 7, quacker. Now, when I first read about this one, I thought it said Quaker the entire time, like the ground was perhaps splitting open, like an earthquake. That would fit in with this list, right? No, Mother Nature sending loud signals from below. Apparently, I was reading it wrong. The quacker was heard during the Cold War. It was heard while Soviet Navy ballistic missile submarines were all heading through the North Atlantic and Arctic waters. Now, at some point, they heard quacking. Yeah, quacking, like a duck almost, some sort of deep ribbit. Now, whenever a submarine passed this specific area, this loud quack would come from deep below. It came from an object that was moving around, so that's the concerning part here. Was this a big duck? I don't think so. But what was it? That's the whole thing, right? I certainly hope it wasn't a big duck. The Soviets thought that they overheard secret US tech. You know, the deep sea duck. I've heard rumors about this. We gotta get out of here. No, we have no idea. There were still no answers provided. Scientists currently believe that it came from a giant squid, which is way more terrifying than a duck. And it's also somehow more alarming than the ocean floor cracking open. For me, I don't know. Cracking open, kraken, crack, oh shit. Number 6, sounds of Marianas Trench. Okay, hold your breath for this next one, folks, and turn the volume up. Why not? The Challenger Deep is the deepest known point on Earth's seabed. My ears are popping just thinking about this already. This is a nightmare. The Challenger Deep is, of course, located at the south side of the Marianas Trench in the Pacific. Now, you may not witness this depression up close at any point in your life, but thanks to the internet, now you can hear it. Scientists recorded around 23 days of material on the ocean floor. And it's not just bubbles, it's more trouble. You know what I mean? There's a lot going on down there. Only 4 manned missions have ever been this deep, the last one being 2012. Now the results here were pretty surprising, being as deep as they were. The sounds were honestly haunting. Oceanographer Robert Ziak was leading this project, and many of these sounds recorded were those from the surface. Which is a weird thing to say, but hear me out. Sound travels quite a ways, and to quote Ziak, the ambient sound field is dominated by the sound of earthquakes, both near and far, as well as distant moans of baleen whales and the clamor of a Category 4 typhoon that just happened to pass overhead. So yeah, it's a lot happening at once. Take a listen. Number 5, mystery boom. Boom, boom, boom? Question mark? This one here was pretty recent. Early 2021 in San Diego, residents reacted to what sounded like a sonic boom. Windows were moving, doors were rattling. A lot of San Diego heard and actually felt this thing. But what was it? Many don't know. Nobody knows. At this point, many believe it was an earthquake. You know, being in San Diego and all, that wouldn't exactly be shocking. But this hits the point home even further. These residents here are used to earthquakes. This was entirely new. This was something they've never felt before, and obviously it was concerning. No earthquakes were reported at the time, and the Marines didn't speak up about anything. And if it was a sonic boom from a plane, well, they would have to tell you. And also, they're not allowed to do it that close to the coast. You can't sonic boom a family of 4 trying to have a beach day because you want to do some tests. That's not gonna happen. So what was it? Our best guess is that this boom came from, you guessed it, the ocean, which is way more concerning than a thunderstorm or a jet. What's down there? What's rattling? Earthquakes? Kraken? I think it's the Kraken. Number 4, the whistle. Who would have thought that a whistle would be terrifying? Me. Anything in the ocean's terrifying. That's why I thought so. Picked up by hydrophones, of course, as most of these insane things are commonly found in the depths of the deepest, darkest seas, was a whistle. Yeah, we actually don't know where this one even came from. See others on this list, we have some ideas. Certain radar points that we can look around in, maybe pinpoint some sort of idea, like that weird duck thing that was below. We had an idea. The whistle, though, well, that's a total mystery as far as location goes. Back in 1997, this was picked up and it came from, again, somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. Isn't that comforting? Just somewhere out there, anywhere. And this noise is a little similar to volcanic noises recorded in the Mariana Volcanic Arc, so that's our best guess, but still, no idea. This whistle got the attention of every single hydrophone, which is pretty impressive. It has to be one loud whistle. Can you whistle? It's always so impressive to me when someone can whistle. I can't hail a cab in New York at all. I'm like, gone. I missed it. Number 3, Julia. Another normal name, another creepy underwater backstory. Here we go. Julia, let's talk about her. What did she do? Who is she? Back in March 1999, this noise here was recorded, again, by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA for short. Now this time, the noise was heard across the entire Pacific Ocean and the entire hydrophone array. So across all that distance, this sound was carried, another loud one. So whatever made this noise has to have some pretty powerful horsepower behind it. Now this noise is pretty long, again, and we can't include the entire clip, but some people out here really think that this is the Kraken or some sort of elder god like Cthulhu or something. The point of origin is determined to be somewhere around Bransfield Straits and Cape Adair, which sounds both like locations from the Elden Ring, so I don't know what's going on over there at Cape Adair, but it's pretty frightening. This Cape Adair gets a lot of action, and we think it's because of icebergs, but again, there's no hard evidence here. Everything's slipping and sliding around. But what do you guys think? Is the Kraken's real name Julia? I vote yes. Number 2, 52 Hertz whale. I love whales. They're the closest thing to a dinosaur, in my opinion. They're underwater. They're like the nicest thing about an ocean. They're so soft and slow and beautiful. Also terrifying, but beautiful. Complex creatures. Complex creatures that we should leave alone, especially the 52 Hertz whale. Definitely that one. What's going on? There's a documentary about this whale, specifically about their sound. Joshua Zeman made a documentary about, I'm not gonna lie, the loneliest whale on the planet. Sounds pretty depressing, and believe me, it is, but it's equally as interesting. See, for decades now, we've heard this sound, and now this film, called The Loneliest Whale, The Search for 52, has people crying, but now we have some answers. How do we find the loneliest whale? And also, why is he so lonely? What did he do? What happened? We all deserve love. Back in 1989, the US Navy first detected the sound that measured in at more than twice frequency of a normal, healthy whale call, so it got their attention, right? What is this? Originally, what got them intrigued was the fact that this could have been a military mechanical sound, of course. Then they thought, well, maybe it's an animal, because it's moving around a bit. Perhaps it's a hybrid dinosaur. We've never heard this sound. No, it's just a lonely, sad whale. But why is its frequency scaring away so many possible friends and mates? Well, we don't know. Again, maybe it can't whistle. Like me, that's why. And finally, number 1, crop circles. We'll finish off with a cute one, I guess. Why not, right? Although I'm arguing that this one is still pretty terrifying. Crop circles on the ocean floor. Aliens confirmed, my friends. They were first spotted back in 1995, right off the southern coast of Japan, and for 16 years, these things were blowing the minds of divers. And I absolutely can see this. Like, nobody knew where these signals were coming from. There would be one a week, just these weird symbols, these alien symbols, hieroglyphics underwater, and then the next week, they would be gone. Tiny aliens or cute tiny pufferfish? That's right, the latter. In 2011, one of these dudes got caught in 4K, and it's one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. These male pufferfish, they try and lure in all these ladies by making art on the ocean floor. You know, some birds dance like crazy, while some fish make art. Yeah, those are animals that we live with. Deal with it, I guess. The thing that baffles me here, concerns me really, if anything, is that the pufferfish uses a shell. Like, he uses a tool to carve away his emotions. That's crazy. I didn't know fish could do this. I'm really blown away here. I'm not sure what this symbol means here, but it's signaling something. It's signaling maybe love? I don't know. We could all use some of that, no?
At number 10, Marsquake. On May 5th, 2018, NASA launched the InSight Mars lander, and it was designed to give the planet its first thorough checkup since being formed. This technology allows us to collect lots of data, like hearing what's going on inside of the planet. Compared to Earth, the interior of Mars is fairly quiet, but it still experiences quakes underneath the surface. The InSight lander is equipped with a seismometer called Seismic Experiment for Interior Structure, or they just call it SEIS, which picks up on the different
vibrations of the planet and allow scientists to hear what the heck is going on inside. In April 2019, the size got its first hit, which turned out to be, for the first time ever, a Marsquake. This is the first recorded trembling that appears to have come from inside the planet as opposed to being caused by forces above the surface like wind. Most people are familiar with quakes on Earth, which are caused by the moving of tectonic plates. Mars does not have tectonic plates like the moon, but they both still experience quakes. In this case, they're caused by a continual process of cooling and contraction that creates stress. The stress then builds over time until strong enough to break the crust. The audio of the quake is very ominous sounding, almost like a really strong wind, but since space is so silent, it makes things super ominous. It's not so terrifying until you remember it's coming from inside of the planet. Number 9. The Sun. Considering space is such a quiet place, it really seems like everything in it makes a lot of noise. The Sun is no exception. I was totally happy before this video not thinking about the Sun making noise, but now I'm afraid it's all I will be able to think of. The Sun has so much energy coming out of it that it vibrates on multiple frequencies at once, which then cause a humming sound. To me, the Sun sounds like one of those singing bowls used in meditation. It's almost soothing until you remember that you're listening to the Sun vibrate. NASA explained how we're able to hear the Sun, and basically when anything material moves, waves travel through it, and the same thing happens inside the Sun. Those waves are bouncing around the Sun, and if our eyes were sensitive enough, we could actually see this jiggle. Since our human eyes are so useless and weak, scientists turned that jiggle into a sound. Like Mars, we want to know what's going on inside, and thanks to the Sun vibrating at many different frequencies, we can use those vibrations to look inside. Now scientists can see huge rivers of solar material flowing around and are starting to finally understand the layers of the Sun. Number 8. Crossing Saturn's rings. October 15, 1997 marks the day that the Cassini-Huygens was launched. Commonly just called Cassini, was a space research mission by NASA, the European Space Agency, and the Italian Space Agency to send a space probe to study the planet Saturn and its systems, including its rings and natural satellites. Cassini was the fourth space probe to visit Saturn and the first to enter its orbit, where it stayed from 2004 to 2007. During this mission, one of the things they discovered, unfortunately, was what it sounds like to cross the planet's rings. Saturn's rings are made up of billions of small chunks of ice and rock coated with other materials such as dust. The audio clip sounds mainly like static, but as it goes, you can hear more action and the sound becomes more intense. It's almost like the sound of a really heavy rain. Cassini's initial dive into the void of Saturn's rings was on April 26, 2017, when the sounds were recorded. Not only was this our first time hearing what this section of space sounds like, it's the first time a spacecraft has ever ventured into the gap between the planet and its rings. The sound is so loud it's hard to believe that scientists were surprised to see just how empty it was. At number 7, Earth Whistle. This sound is terrifying because it sounds like something straight out of a video game. Space is far from empty, and as we are learning today, it's not very quiet either. Space contains energetic charged particles governed by magnetic and electric fields, and it behaves like nothing we've ever experienced on Earth before. Particles are continually tossed to and fro by the motion of various electromagnetic waves known as plasma waves. The plasma waves create a rhythmic noise that, with the right tools, we can hear across space. Basically, the waves create distinct sounds depending on the plasma they travel through. For example, the region tight around the Earth called the plasmasphere is pretty dense with cold plasma. Waves traveling inside the region might sound much different to those outside of it. Beyond the plasmasphere, where it's warmer, waves can create a high-pitched chirping sound like a flock of noisy birds. If you look up Earth Whistle, it sounds like the classic laser gun sound effect or like crickets and frogs at night. Either way, it sounds fake, and it's hard to believe it was recorded right by Earth in space. Number 6. Jupiter. Everyone thinks aliens live on Mars. Due to its similarities to Earth, maybe it is the one housing another life form. I would agree it makes a lot of sense that aliens are hanging out on Mars. That was until I heard what it sounds like on Jupiter. I mentioned earlier Cassini, the spacecraft that was sent on a mission to check out Saturn. Well, Cassini had a historic 20-year mission to Saturn, and while in space it stopped by Jupiter to receive a gravitational boost en route to its final destination. Cassini flew by Jupiter in January 2001. While it was flying by, it captured some spooky alien-like radio signals. Of all the sounds on this list, the ones on Jupiter sound the most like aliens. The other sounds were spooky, but this one sounds almost animated, perhaps like a conversation even. Apparently the sound comes from waves that were derived from an interaction of the magnetic field that surrounds Jupiter and the solar wind of particles speeding away from the sun. At number 5, unusually close signals. signals. There are bright, fleeting blasts of radio waves coming from the vicinity of a nearby galaxy, and they are only pushing one of astronomy's biggest mysteries even further from an answer. The repeating bursts of energy seem to be coming from an ancient group of stars called a globular cluster. What's so special about that? Well, it's one of the last places astronomers expected to find them. These extremely bright and extremely brief bursts of radio waves are known as fast radio bursts, or FRBs. Originating billions of light years away, the FRBs have defied explanation since they were first spotted in 2007. Based on observations, scientists infer that the bursts are powered by young, short-lived cosmic objects called magnetars. That was until a couple of years ago when a fast radio burst was discovered and traced to a globular cluster about 11.7 million light years away near the neighboring spiral galaxy M81. At number 4, space roar. In space, nobody can hear you scream, but scientists did pick up on what they described as a roar. I don't know if you could find a scarier sound coming from space. Back in 2006, scientists began looking for distant signals in the universe using a complex instrument attached to a huge balloon that was sent to space. The instrument is called the Absolute Radiometer for Cosmology, Astrophysics, and Diffuse Emissions, or just ARCADE. The ARCADE was able to pick up radio waves from the heat of distant stars, but none of them were expecting what they heard next. The instrument listened from a height of about 23 miles, and it picked up a signal that was 6 times louder than what had originally been expected. They tried to source the loud sound, but soon discovered it was too loud to be early stars and far louder than the predicted combined radio emission from distant galaxies, so basically scientists were stumped. Even today, we still have no idea what the source of the roar was. Apparently, on top of not knowing the source, the mysterious sound is so loud that it's making the efforts to search for signals from the first stars formed after the Big Bang quite difficult. It's just out there covering up our view of early stars and being emitted by something we can't yet imagine. Number 3. Space heartbeat mystery. Mysterious radio signals from space have been known to repeat, but a few years back, for the first time, researchers noticed a pattern in a series of bursts coming from a single source half a billion light years away from Earth. Fast radio bursts, or FBRs, which I mentioned before, are millisecond-long bursts of radio waves in space. Individual radio bursts emit once and don't repeat, but repeating FRBs are known to send out the waves multiple times. Usually when they repeat, it's sporadic or in a cluster, according to previous observations. Between September 16, 2018 and October 30, 2019, researchers with the Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment, or CHIME, detected a pattern in bursts occurring every 16.35 days. Over the course of 4 days, the signal would release a burst or two each hour, then it would go silent for another 12 days. In 2019, CHIME detected the sources of 8 new repeating fast radio bursts, including this signal. The repeating signal was traced to a massive spiral galaxy around 500 million light years away. Researchers hope that by tracing the origin of these mysterious bursts, they would be able to determine what caused them, but to this day, scientists still have no idea. I know I mentioned aliens a lot, but come on. If anything is another life form trying to get in communication with us, it has to be this. What else would be able to stay so consistent in space? Number 2. Jupiter's bow shock. Well, we all know now that I think Jupiter is home to aliens already, but after hearing Jupiter's bow shock, I don't know if I'm more or less convinced. The sun emits a steady stream of charged solar wind, which can be repelled by a very strong magnetic force, like that of the magnetic field of a larger planet. When the solar wind meets a strong magnetic force surrounding a planet, it's deflected, and all its energy of motion is converted to thermal energy. This energized region is known as a bow shock. The name is borrowed from a similar phenomenon in aerodynamics. The sound of passing through this region was recorded by the Voyager spacecraft. Voyager 1 and 2 were both launched into space in 1977 to take advantage of a favorable alignment of Jupiter and Saturn. When the spacecraft encountered the bow shock, there was a very sudden burst of intense low-frequency emissions extending over a wide range of frequencies. To me, the bow shock on Jupiter sounds like the little aliens are just chilling, chattering away, and then explosion. It sounds like something big blows up, and the tone of it is much deeper than the high pitch of Jupiter itself. Once again, remembering that the sound was recorded in space makes it even crazier. And at number 1, black hole. Okay, of all the sounds you can hear from space, a black hole is the scariest. I think also just in general, black holes are one of the scariest things that exist. First of all, what the heck is a black hole? Well, according to NASA, a black hole is a place in space where gravity pulls so much that even light cannot get out. Horrifying. The gravity is so strong because the matter has been squeezed into a tiny space. This can happen when a star is dying. Because no light can get out, people can't see black holes. They are invisible. Space telescopes with special tools can help find black holes. The special tools can see how stars that are very close to black holes act differently than other stars. The sound that a black hole makes is even more haunting. I've never heard a more fitting sound effect for a spine-chilling scene in a horror movie. It sounds like what I think hundreds of ghosts and spirits would sound like if they were to circle around a spooky dungeon. Maybe it's just me, but I seriously think it's a sound they used in Harry Potter when they were at Azkaban.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have interception. To start off this list today, let's talk about one of the very first electronic interceptions because, to be honest, this was happening sooner than I would have thought, but in a very different way than what we're used to now. Let's set the stage and take it back to the beginning of the 1900s, the first year of the new century. We were in the midst of the Boer War, which lasted from 1899 until 1902. Prior to this war, the British Royal Navy had installed wireless sets that had been produced by Marconi onto their ships. This allowed the British Army to be able to use some limited wireless signaling and communication. During the war, however, nearing the end, things took a bit of a turn. While the British had captured and were holding cities and towns, there were still many dispersed Boer commandos who were out there and were taking to different tactics. They began a guerrilla war, and part of that was by intercepting telegraph messages. Not only did they intercept important messages, but they were even able to capture some of the sets to be able to use them themselves. In our number 9 spot today, we have mobilization. The Russo-Japanese War is one that lasted for a little over a year, spanning from 1904 to 1905. While the war was mainly between Russia and Japan, the signal interception I want to talk about today came from a British ship. As the Russian fleet was preparing for conflict with Japan in 1904, a British ship called the HMS Diana was stationed in the Suez Canal. This canal is located in Egypt and it connects the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea. While stationed here, the HMS Diana ended up intercepting Russian naval wireless signals that were being sent out. These signals were apparently intended to signal for the mobilization of the fleet. In our number 8 spot today, we have the BBC. So for this one, we have to be on the same page for what a numbers station is. Basically, they're shortwave radio stations, and the transmissions or broadcasts are usually certain numbers or other repetitive things which are believed to be aimed to address intelligence officers who are operating in foreign countries. So for this one, we are taking it back to 1983 when the BBC, yes, the British Broadcasting Corporation, received a letter from a listener they had in Andorra. This listener had written into the World Service Waveguide program to complain that during her attempt at listening, she was interrupted by a female voice that was reading out numbers in English, and she wanted to know what this interference was. While the corporation gave a regular, non-sinister answer to the confused woman, after more research was done into the case, people aren't quite convinced. Many people who know much more about these things and recognize the patterns seen in number stations are fairly certain that this interruption was a numbers station that was being broadcast on a random frequency that just happened to intercept with this woman's BBC program. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Duga radar. So for this one, we are talking about a huge missile defense radio structure called Duga 3. This structure is suspected of having been wildly over budget, and it was the source of many complaints after it was built. The systems were extremely powerful and broadcast in short-wave radio bands. They would appear without warning and sounded like a sharp, repetitive tapping noise, and it would disrupt things like legitimate broadcasts, amateur radio, commercial aviation communications, and utility transmissions, which all led to there being international complaints, and at the time, people didn't know what it was. This led people to think that this signal was actually being used for things such as Soviet mind control or weather control experiments. In our number 6 spot today, we have World War I. For this one, we are taking it back to the First World War and discussing something that really changed the way we use wireless communications. Basically, during the First World War, British forces were able to intercept German radio communications. With this newfound ability, they were able to learn about the plans that German forces had and used this to their advantage. Of course, later when this was found out, no one wanted a similar thing to happen to them, but the technology was so valuable they couldn't just give up on it. This is said to be what
led to the use of cryptography, which was intended to conceal the messages being sent out, and thus cryptoanalysis, which originated to get around this new extra layer of protection, was born. In our number 5 spot today we have Cobra Mist. This is the code name that was used to describe the experimental over-the-horizon radar that ended up being stationed at Orford Ness, England. It was originally supposed to be stationed in Turkey, where it could cover most of the European Soviet airspace, but Turkey had some objections and weren't all that pleased with the idea. This led to the site being moved to the UK, where it offers a view of most of Eastern Europe. The system was built through the 1960s and into the 1970s, so you think it would have been this amazing success, but things went more than a little awry when it was first turned on. When switched on, it began having these noise problems, and despite best efforts, no one could figure out where these problems were coming from, which led to the project being shut down in 1973. In our number 4 spot today we have UVB-76. This sound apparently began to happen in the 1980s when a radio tower just north of Moscow began transmitting a random and seemingly bizarre assortment of beeps, but in 1992 the sound began to change. In that year it suddenly switched to a buzzing sort of sound that would last about a second, and this sound would occur somewhere between 21 to 34 times every minute. This strange routine would be interrupted once every few weeks by a male voice, which would then be reciting a string of numbers and words, mostly Russian sounding names like Anna and Nikolai. The buzzing wasn't necessarily always exactly the same, as the tone would switch and there would be different intervals between the buzzes, but one thing that was always consistent is that every hour on the hour, the station would have 2 quick consecutive buzzes. To make things stranger, in June of 2010 and also in August of that year, the station briefly stopped sending out signals, despite it having been constantly for years and years. At the end of August in 2010, the station again changed and there began to be different shuffling sounds and thuds that could be heard in the background, and often little snippets of the Dance of the Little Swans from Swan Lake would also interrupt the broadcast. While we obviously know that these sounds are coming from a radio broadcast and we can make out what some of the sounds we're hearing are, we have absolutely no idea what purpose they serve, where they are coming from, or what they might mean. Right now the best guess is that these are secret messages that are being transmitted to secret agents. If that is the case, it's likely we might never know exactly what is being discussed in these broadcasts. In our number 3 spot today we have the Lincolnshire Poacher. The Lincolnshire Poacher, which is a British numbers station, was being transmitted from Cyprus. It began transmitting in the middle of the 1960s and was in operation until quite recently in 2008. The station is believed to have been operated by the British Secret Intelligence Service, and the reason behind its name is because it is said that the station commonly used bars from the English folk song of the same name. There would often be a female voice heard reciting a group of 5 numbers, with the final number in the group being read in a higher pitched voice. It is believed that the station was meant to be communicating with undercover agents operating in the Middle East. Back in 2006, however, this broadcasting was interrupted by the North Korean Foreign Language Service, Voice of Korea. This language service began to broadcast on the same frequency as the Lincolnshire Poacher, which some believe may have been intentional. In our number 2 spot today we have Ana Montez. For this one, we're taking a bit of a turn and talking about someone who used secret signals and transmissions in order to spy on the US for Cuba. Ana Montez is a former American senior analyst at the Defense Intelligence Agency, and for 17 years she used encrypted messages to receive information and communicate with the Cuban government in order to spy on the United States. In the charging documents, American federal prosecutors said, quote, "Montez communicated with the Cuban intelligence service through encrypted messages and received her instructions through shortwave encrypted transmissions from Cuba. In addition, Montez communicated by coded numeric pager messages with the Cuban intelligence service by public telephones located in the District of Columbia and Maryland. The codes included "I received message" or "danger." Anna was arrested by the FBI at her office on September 21st, 2001, and part of the reason why is because she apparently had classified information on the US military's pending invasion of Afghanistan, and people were worried that she might go on to further reveal this information. While Anna pleaded guilty to her crimes, which could have carried a death sentence, she received 25 years and her tentative release date is January 8th, 2023. In our number 1 spot today, we have Atencion. This is a number station that ended up being the first to be officially and publicly accused of transmitting messages to spies. This station was the center of an espionage trial, and US prosecutors claimed that the station was sending numbered codes for the accused to write down using Sony handheld shortwave receivers and then decode using a computer program. This gave them their next instructions that were to be followed in their spying plans. During this trial, the FBI testified that they had entered one of the spies' apartments and copied the decryption code that was used for the messages sent from the station. Using this code, they were able to unveil the secret messages being sent out, which they read in court.
Starting off this countdown, we have the new reality. There are a number of real people out there that have gone to bed and woke up in a completely different universe or reality. One where things are the same, but slightly different. Now, if you have seen our other videos, we have talked in depth about some of these stories, like the woman named Lorena Garcia. One day she woke up with a completely different job, was with the same company, just a different position, and she had a completely different boyfriend. Her former boyfriend just disappeared without a trace. And now she's stuck in this timeline versus her old one. Then you have a man that woke up and all of a sudden he was a fisherman. He spent the day living a different life, and the next day he was back to his old self. Now, no one knows what causes this to happen, but it personally terrifies me. What if I accidentally universe jump to a place where I'm unhappy, or my life is just completely different? Plus, no one would believe me, they would label me as crazy. In our 9th spot today, we have the Mandela effect. The Mandela effect is a huge signal from a parallel universe. For those of you who don't know, it is named after Nelson Mandela. This is because people remember him dying in prison in the 80s when, in this reality, he didn't pass away until 2013. Now, what's weird is I personally was taught in school that he died in prison in the 80s. We even had a school assembly on him and they taught us that. So theory goes that in one universe, Nelson Mandela did actually pass away in the 80s, and in another universe, he passed away in 2013. Somehow, the universes ended up overlapping or merging somehow, which is why some people remember him dying in the 80s and others in the 2000s. Now, there's a number of other examples, okay, here's a good one. Do you all remember in Star Wars, Darth Vader saying, "Luke, I am your father"? I do. No. He never actually said that. He says, "No, I am your father," not even Luke. Also, you got the whole Berenstain Bears versus the Berenstein Bears. My whole life, it was the Steen Bears, not the Stain Bears. But, whatever. Check out our other videos on Mandela effects if you want to learn more. It's actually wild. Moving on to number 8, we have the Green Children of Woolpit. Now, this story has always left me unsettled. There's no explanation besides a parallel universe. Anyways, now back in the 13th century, something very strange happened in the small village of Woolpit, England. 2 weird children randomly appeared in their village, and they were out of place. The 2 were brother and sister, but they had weird greenish colored skin. To make things weirder, they spoke in a language that no one had heard of, and they were dressed in weird clothing. Eventually, they were taken in, but sadly, the boy became sick and passed away. The girl, on the other hand, started to live a normal life. She started to eat normal food, and she started to lose the green color in her skin. After learning to speak English, she said that her and her brother were from a place where people had green skin, and the sun didn't shine bright. They were herding their dad's cattle when all of a sudden they heard a loud noise, and then bam, they were in a new place. Now, the girl ended up growing up and marrying a man and starting a whole new life here. But it seems like the 2 traveled there from another dimension. Maybe there's a parallel universe where humans have green skin. But seriously, there's no other explanation for this story. It's absolutely wild. In our 7th spot today, we have the black holes. According to Stephen Hawking, he believes that black holes are a signal from a parallel universe. In 2016, Hawking created a study in which he proposed that black holes actually lead to another universe instead of destroying everything that goes near them. Previously, it was said that everything that gets sucked into the black holes will just be destroyed and lost forever. But in this case, they would just travel through and then pop out into another universe. Maybe that's why scientists are starting to discover weird space objects that look unlike anything from our universe. It's because they're from a different universe. Maybe Stephen Hawking was onto something and black holes are actually portals. In our sixth spot, we have the UFO lights. So there have been a number of stories of the military or airplanes seeing weird bright lights in the sky that look like they're from a UFO craft. There's even a blip on their radar suggesting that something is flying in the air. But when they get to the space where the craft is supposed to be, it disappears without a trace, or it's just not there for them to see. Now, there's a new theory that this could be a signal from aliens or other beings from another universe. In fact, a study from 2018 suggests that aliens are probably real, but the reason we haven't found them yet is because they're living on planets in other universes. Maybe every time we think we see a craft, it's them signaling to us from their universe. I mean, aliens are said to be way more advanced than us, so chances are they probably are trying to find a way to contact us or to travel to us. We're now at our fifth and halfway mark with the other version of yourself. A number of people have shared stories in which people are like, oh hey, I saw you at this place, how did you get here? Or hey, I just finished talking to you at the grocery store, and they're like, I wasn't at the grocery store, I wasn't talking to you. One guy shared a story where he got a text from his friend saying, was so great to catch up, hope to see you again soon. Now, he was confused, so he gave his friend a call. And the friend said that he just finished talking to him outside of a coffee shop for about 15 minutes, and that he told him all about his promotion. First off, the guy was home all day, okay, so he wasn't at the coffee shop. Second, he hadn't told anyone about his new promotion. So it's believed that his friend was talking to himself from another universe. How wild is that? I just hope my parallel universe self is doing well. In our fourth spot today, we have the time traveler. So not only are parallel universes real, but time travel or dimension hopping might also be real too. A guy named Gavin might have the answers to this. So when this guy was around 16, he had a best friend named Gavin. Gavin was extremely smart. Apparently he had an IQ of around 180, but he was also kind of socially awkward. Now, the narrator and him used to spend a lot of time at each other's houses, playing World of Warcraft, watching YouTube videos, you name it. Anyways, one day he decided to show up at Gavin's house uninvited to see if he wanted to hang out. When he got there was a man around 40 years old, and he opened the door. At first he thought it was Gavin's dad because they looked the same, but it wasn't. So he asked him if Gavin was home, and that's when the man said, I am Gavin. The narrator was like, no, the 16-year-old Gavin. He thought maybe this was his uncle or something and they had the same name. That's when his face went completely pale, and he said that Gavin would be home in about an hour. Sure enough, he went back to his house an hour later and young Gavin was there. But when the narrator asked him who had been at his house earlier, Gavin was confused. He had no one else in his family named Gavin, and no one had been in his house prior. Not only that, but years later, Gavin ended up studying quantum mechanics. So theory 1, Gavin learned how to time travel. Theory 2, the narrator managed to meet with Gavin's parallel universe self. Or theory 3, the narrator somehow managed to jump in time. To this day, no one knows how to explain what happened to him. In our third spot, we have the parallel universe being. So 5 years ago, this individual thinks that they met someone from another universe, or that they traveled to another universe. Let me explain. So one day she was at the beach with her dog when she saw this strange man walking across the street. The man really stood out to her because he was donning the biggest smile on his face, and he was walking like a cartoon character. His arms were just swinging from side to side with very exaggerated movements. A couple months later, she was with her mom and sister when she saw the exact same man again. Her sister noticed him first and commented on how weird he was walking. Almost immediately, their mom piped up and said to not make fun of this man. Now here's where it gets strange. A couple weeks later, the girl was out for a late night run when she encountered this man for a third time. However, this time, something was very off about him. He wasn't happy and he wasn't swinging his arms like before. This time, he had a huge frown on his face and he was walking all slumped over and sad. The girl ran home and told her mom and sister what she had saw, but they had no clue what she was talking about. She talked about the time that all three of them had seen this man and how the mom was like, don't make fun of him, okay? Leave him alone. But the mom and sister both did not remember the encounter at all. It's almost like it never happened. So basically, the girl was in one universe where this man was happy and weirdly outgoing, and then managed to switch into another universe where this man was just the complete opposite. In the second universe, the encounter with this man and the mom and sister never happened, which is why they had no clue what she was talking about. Isn't that wild? Like, it's literally mind-blowing. Moving on to number 2, we have the deaths. A number of people have also shared their experience with dying and then waking up in another reality. This individual got into a car accident on February 20th, 2022, so this story happened fairly recently. She was driving home from work when the weather shifted. Sadly, a truck traveling by her ended up crashing into her, and she crashed into the guardrails and then off the side of the road into the water below. She vividly remembers this happening. She remembers feeling the force of the truck hitting her and crashing into the water, and then madly trying to escape as her car flooded with water. Unfortunately, her legs were crushed underneath the dashboard and she was unable to move. She sadly lost her life. But the next thing she knew, she was alive. The car accident never happened. She was fine. Currently, this woman is coping with the trauma from what she went through. She doesn't understand it one bit, but she knows that she died and she knows that she shouldn't be alive. And in our number 1 spot today, we have swapped in time. Have you ever had amnesia and you just can't recall certain things? Maybe people are telling you stories of things you witnessed, but you seriously just can't remember any of it? Well, some researchers believe that maybe they somehow swapped places with a parallel universe version of themselves. And that's why they don't remember what happened. Because they weren't the ones that witnessed it. It was their other version of themselves. Now, this kind of makes sense. I mean, I remember a bunch of things that my family doesn't, and then they end up calling me a liar saying that these things never happened when I know in fact that they did, okay?